Okay, good morning. Public employee will now come to session. Mr. Clerk, could you call the roll, please?
Alderman Ordman?
Present.
Alderman Villa?
Here.
Alderman Arnowitz?
Here.
Alderwoman Murphy? Alderwoman Spencer?
Present.
Alderwoman Green? Alderman Ogilvy?
Here.
Chairman Williamson?
Here.
We have 6 present and we have a quorum.
All right, thank you. We have one board bill on the agenda today, Board Bill 65, and I believe we have the Director of Personnel, Mr. Richard Frank, will probably come up and explain the board bill on the agenda today. Good morning, Mr. Frank.
Short. It's nice meeting you all. Nice meeting you, Alderman Spencer. We've talked a couple times. This is actually a presentation of a new compensation ordinance. It's the result of the 3rd year of collective bargaining agreements that we had signed with almost all of our unions. It was a wage reopener, but there's quite a bit of substance in this particular compensation ordinance because it incorporates a lot of new changes by virtue of the police transition. It also reflects some requests that the alderman had asked me to look at several years ago in terms of pay grades, and also some cleanup language. We had a very successful negotiation session. We have 11 unions currently. We reached agreement with all 11, so we're very, very happy about that. And we also, are looking forward to the next set of collective bargaining agreements, which will be in the fall. We'll go right back into negotiations and hopefully get multi-year agreements again. We are essentially looking to have this passed out as quickly as possible because it'd be effective with the board's approval and the mayor's signature for the new year, and it does result in some increases for a number of different employees. Even though inflation was 0% this year, our employees are now, by virtue of the board, in a 30-step matrix where each step is 1.5%, and that naturally matches with the city's growth of about 1.5%. So we believe that these things are sustainable, and we have worked closely with the budget office and administration, but particularly with the budget office in terms of costing out these proposals. And I'd be glad to go into that if you have any information. In terms of the summary of changes, I'd like to start by saying that there were a number of positions where the city fell behind and was no longer competitive. It's my charge as Director of Personnel under the Charter to make sure that we are competitive when we pay our positions so that we can attract and retain qualified staff. The first group that you'll notice that we have recommended pay grade changes to are Airfield Operations Specialist, Airfield Operations Specialist Lead, Airport Operations Supervisor. And when we make these recommendations, we don't just decide, we don't think they make enough. What we do is we do full compensation studies, not even quite like what the private sector does, where they'll just do comparison of salaries. We match them to, first of all, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which has about 200 organizations. We do that regionally here in the Midwest. Then we also look at sister cities. We have a list of about 20 different cities that we do a base comparison with. And then we also look at specialized types of departments like the airport. So we are recommending for that series where we've had retention problems an increase. A number of the other positions here, fingerprint technician supervisor, firearms examiner, and then the latent fingerprint examiner, are a result of the fact that we are no longer competitive in the police forensic area. When we did the classification study of the police 2 years ago, we studied 1,886 positions. We were very happy with the fact that only 37 of them appealed to me, and none of them appealed to our commission. So everybody was pretty happy. But we've noticed that we've gotten terribly backlogged in the work in the forensic lab, and with the crime increase, I think everybody can understand that. So one of the things that we needed to do was to address these positions to make sure that they were competitive with St. Louis County, St. Charles, and the surrounding communities. So we have made, with the at the request of the police commissioner and based upon empirical data, recommendations to increase all of those positions. We then have the fleet maintenance group, fleet maintenance technician 3, technician 4, and the foreman. We have an awful problem recruiting these people. These are the technicians that work on the heavy duty type of equipment, the big diesel and the great big motor equipment. And we had worked with the unions in terms of what their feelings were. We're trying now to start grow some of these positions in-house where we'll bring them in at lower levels. and actually train them so that we can get them into the city service. But we also felt we absolutely needed to make a change and a grade increase for these employees in terms of retention. And then lastly, veterinarian technician. This was sort of an anomaly. The last time the position was studied was in 1998. The vet techs were making less money than the animal control officers who just clean the cages and go out and enforce, animal care and control. So the vet techs does call for a college degree, an associate's degree, a lot of technical experience. I'm a huge animal fan, but outside of that, we really felt that that was something that was very necessary, and it would address some recruitment problems in our health department. The other thing that I want to point out is we've rejiggled some classes here. Several members of this committee asked me several years ago to look at the building inspector supervisors to make sure that they were properly graded. I think the building commissioner testified, the director of public safety was here. We did do a study, and based on the study of comparison cities, we are recommending that those supervisory level positions be retitled and receive a 5% increase. We think that will help the building division perform its functions and add some stability at the upper level. It also eliminates a problem that the building division had. What had happened is when the building division restructured, they had people at the same pay grade, like the electrical inspector supervisors and the mechanical inspector supervisors, reporting to supervisors who are at the same pay grade. That's not a best practice standard. I mean, that's not appropriate. And so this change rectifies that inequality and that inequity. We also are adding a new class, landscape supervisor. This position is specifically at the airport. The position was a gardener supervisor, but based on an extensive study of my staff, we found that this position actually performs a much broader range of duties. They provide functional supervision to all the airfield maintenance people who do the work on like the construction, the curbside, all the green spaces out at the airport, all of it, with a very limited budget, fall under the supervision of this person. And so this is a new job class that we had recommended and was approved by the Civil Service Commission. In terms of the different sections, what we're doing, we reached an agreement with all the unions that we would grant the 1.5% merit increase. And we're excited about that this year for two reasons. Number one, it's a continuation of the step system that this committee allowed to happen. So there's a future for people. They can look and see that they are progressing, and a person who's been here 4 years is going to make more than a person who's been here 3 years. It also represents a real gain for the first time in a while because our health insurance is only going up by 0.9%. I'd like to address that with the committee later, but by combining with the police, we were able to save over $4 million a year for each of a 2-year period. So we only, our health insurance is only going up by 0.9%. That is phenomenal. And we increased benefits. We did that by virtue of combining with the police division. So there's going to be a very minimal impact in cost to employees. The typical rate is about 7 to 9% increase with a reduction in benefits. Our employees, and we negotiated all this, are going to see an increase in some benefits with a very, very minor, minimal, less than 1% increase. So the trades and AFSCME and the carpenters and the civilian personnel division and all receive this 1.5%. With the fire and the police, we are recommending their normal longevity, I can never say that word, longevity increase, but we've also added a $2,000 increase, which would be divided into 27 pay periods. We're doing that because, quite frankly, we are just not competitive. We've done extensive studies of, both the fire and police, and we are way, way behind. I can tell you for police, it's particularly frightening because we were $9,000 behind the police officer trainee, and St. Louis County is paying people at about $48,000, and we're bringing them in at $40,000. So we've really worked hard to be able to address the situation with fire and police by giving them incremental increases. This is really important. One of the things I'm doing as director, we had 1,500 applicants for firefighter, but only 250 for police officer trainees. So I've increased through pay regulation the starting salary for police officer trainees from $32,000 to $41,000. So we are now competitive with both St. Charles County and with St. Louis County. And when you look at the average salary It's funny, the St. Louis County is actually at a little bit lower than we are overall, not counting years of experience, but our average police officer in St. Louis City now makes more than the people from St. Louis County. So we feel very strongly about that, and very good we were able to reach an agreement. In terms of the next section, employees with the M schedule, we just wanted to clarify, this is kind of cleanup, that we're supportive of shift differential for managers, but only if they're required to work evening hours or weekends. Because as managers, many of us, set our own style and our own work schedule. If Kathleen or myself want to come in, on a weekend, we do that at our own volition. We don't have to do that. So we should not be entitled to a 10% shift differential. The people who should be receiving the shift differential are those managers like fire captains or police managers who have to work, or building division people who have to work those second and third shifts. And for them, we still believe they should receive the shift differential, but not if it's voluntary. The next section is I'll turn the page here, the conversion. We just wanted to state that if a person is reclassified, if we need to reclassify a person, we wanted to clarify that their anniversary date doesn't change. Basically what it means is that somehow the city's gotten your classification wrong, or it's evolved over time, and so you should still be entitled to your normal merit date, because merit is different than a reclassification issue. In terms of overtime, this was a huge issue. What we have done, as we've said, is, as a city, we've been much more generous with overtime. In the past, we counted everything for overtime. The Department of Labor only requires that you pay people for hours that are physically worked. But we didn't think that was fair. What if you're sick, Monday through Friday, and then you get called into work on Saturday? You have to come, or you'll get disciplined. Well, last year, or for the first 2 years of this agreement, we said that holidays wouldn't count, sick leave wouldn't count, medical leave wouldn't count, and it caused a real problem with our unions and their union membership, especially with holidays. We've got a lot of feedback, and I've got a lot of feedback from the board as well, that this was problematic. So we agreed with all of our unions that we would now count holiday time as well as jury leave, as well as vacation and comp time, towards the 40-hour minimum that is required. This was a big, big issue for the unions, and it has minimal cost. It's probably less than $300,000, but for morale and operations, it's a big issue for them. So we did agree to restore that. In terms of the holidays, I think I've already kind of addressed that. We did make a change in the police division just out of fairness. One of the things that I'm trying to do is equalize benefit levels and equalize policies between the police division. And this is one of the reasons why we want to make sure that this is the governing document, that the board governs, the pay and compensation for all employees, including police. And the police commissioner was totally supportive of this, but this allows police officers also, like any other employee, to carry over up to 600 hours of time. In the past, even in their collective bargaining agreement, they could only carry over 240 hours. We didn't think that was fair. So we did that last year, or 2 years ago, for the civilians. Now this also will govern the commissioned officers as well, and they were very happy about that. In terms of vacation, we wanted to clarify that we don't advance vacation leave. That's a real problem. If we advance vacation leave and then somebody gets fired or doesn't pass their working test period, how do we collect? They might take 2 weeks of time and get paid for it. So we just wanted to clarify that there is no advancement for vacation leave. And we also wanted just to state that any hours for employees who don't work a full 40 hours a week, that vacation would be accrued on a proportionate basis. And lastly, all the unions agreed that that we would no longer have what we call terminal vacation leave. Basically what that means is once that you retire or leave the payroll, you're done. There really wasn't a basis, we felt, for continuing to pay holidays just because you had a lot of payment runoff. The compensation ordinance allows you that after you are ready to retire, you can have 1 month, the appointing authority can allow you to go 1 month and take one final month of vacation, and you would then get any holidays that occurred during that period of time. But we've had instances where people have had 4 or 5 months of vacation, just want to say, see you, boss, not going to be here anymore, and they would continue to accrue all this different vacation time. So the unions agreed to that clarification. In terms of medical leave, we also stated there shall be no advancement of medical leave. We do, though, as you know, have a short-term and long-term disability program that kicks in after family medical leave on 90 days. It's a very generous program at no cost to employees, so people are covered through that. Military leave. In the past, the board has from time to time authorized people who are on active duty to receive special compensation. This board approved the HART Act, which I had asked it to do, which ensures that people who are military service people and become disabled will not be penalized for that in terms of the pension system. So if you're out on active duty for 3 years and can't come back to work, you still get all that time credited towards your pension. And that was a really important thing. We went to the state and we got it done. This is the next step. This is just saying that for those few number of employees who are actively engaged in the military, the city will make up the difference between their salary and between what they get in the military. So we think that's a real positive thing. It doesn't impact a lot of people, but it really, I think, speaks well for the city in terms of its outreach to veterans. And then the leave of absence and family medical leave, we just stated that, clarified that they don't accrue time during that time period. And Section 29 is the police manual and special orders. We've been working with the police chief. He's actually revising a lot of his police manual. He's moving more towards special orders. But one of the things that we've done is we've got collective bargaining agreements with the SLPOA. We have collective bargaining agreement with the CPD. A lot of his orders have not yet been updated. What we've done is we've attempted to put all of the pay provisions that apply to police into this document. And this then is the governing document. And it just states that, the board's approval of this is what will be the policy-making type of document. If there's a discrepancy between how military leave is paid based on an old police order or the compensation ordinance is what has to supersede. And we have attempted to get all this in. So I don't know if, Kathleen, if you maybe want to address some of that too, or?
I think that describes it very accurately, just in light of Ordinance 68630, which the board passed, and which spoke to the police manual and the special orders remaining in effect until they were specifically superseded or repealed. We thought the language was important so that what had been negotiated and what this board passes would be take precedent over any inconsistent special orders or police manual provisions that might exist.
We're working with the police commissioner on some overtime codes, and we're going to be doing that naturally because, again, the Department of Labor just issued one order on the minimum amount of money you have to make in order to be considered an exempt employee. But one area where we've had a lot of problems is we're not quite sure of how to code yet some of his laboratory positions. He gets there's a backlog of work, and so we have a meeting set up for June just to see how those positions should be coded in light of the upcoming kind of guidance from the Department of Labor. So we have a meeting set for that, but that is something that we can address at a subsequent time. So this is really the summary of changes that I have regarding the compensation ordinance itself. And I think, again, just in terms of bringing the police in, I'd like to say, because this committee really is my link to the Board of Aldermen, is that the Department of Personnel has worked very, very hard within the last year and a half to have formal contracts in place for the police division that did not exist before. We now have a formal policy on long-term disability that covers both the police and the city employees alike. They had an expired accidental death and dismemberment policy. We've done that. We have come up with a new voluntary benefits program through AFLEC. We rebid the police retiree benefit. We expanded the police retiree benefits and saved the city $536,000 a year in expanded benefits, all through this. We increased their dental program, lowered rates, and I'm just really proud of my staff through negotiations. Again, we saved approximately $4 million a year based on the combination of the police and the city without any loss of benefits to anyone. So that kind of ties up the entire negotiation process. We also had the commitment in writing, of the St. Louis Police Officers Association to work with the state to reform legislation on pension for police in order to make their system more affordable. So we'll be doing that and hopefully getting that letter of support by September. So that concludes my presentation, and as always, I'm very happy and honored to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you. Sound like you've done an excellent job, you and your staff, cleaning it up, and should be very helpful with the city of St. Louis employees. We appreciate it. I'm shocked about the 0.9% with insurance.
Thank you.
I've never seen that as long as I've been a city employee, so that was a great feat. Okay, well, if there's anybody from the public that'd like to say a few things, you can come up for or against, and then if not, we'll go through our members through the committee to see if they have any questions. Nobody signed up? Okay, no one signed up. Mr. Clerk has stated. Okay, we'll start off with Alderman Ortman. Do you have any questions?
Yes, you must have done a pretty good job. The opposition isn't here if there isn't. On a prior page, you mentioned you were comparing city-county police.
Yes.
And will you kind of explain that again? And then
I will.
Then I'll ask my question.
Yeah, you know, we have a really, really good relationship with both the SLPOA and actually the Ethical Society. We're meeting with them in terms of racial diversity. But in terms of the salary, the one thing that we did, first of all, I did under my authority, was raise the rate for police officer trainee from a paltry $32,000 a year up to $41,000 per year. So if the board approves this, you know, we will raise those salaries and everyone will catch up to $41,000. What we've also done in a 3-year period is we have given the police 1,000, actually more than that. When we first took them over in December of 2013, I asked the board, and you granted a $1,000 increase to police. Then for each of the first 2 years of the collective bargaining agreement, they got an additional $1,000. So that's $3,000 right there. Now we're asking you to give them another $2,000. So that's my math's bad. What is that, 2013, 14, 15, and then 16, so like a $5,000 increase. So we're much more competitive. But what's happened, we noticed that a lot of the turnover in our police department occurs at year 3.5, year 5, and then year 11. It's very, very curious. And what happens is that there's a problem with the way our pay is structured. For the first 10 years as a police officer or as a fireman, you get a nice raise, you know, multiple percentages. But then all the way from year 10 to year 30, you only get a 0.3% increase. It's faulty. I didn't design it. One of the things that I'm going to do in the next negotiation session, and I've already talked to Al, who's president of 73, and I don't think Mr. Roard is here, but we're going to look to try and bring the police and fire into our general pay matrix. We think that then there will be one pay matrix for all city employees. It'll be more comprehensible for the board. It's ultimately going to be fair to all employees. To those long-term employees who are at step 10, then instead of getting 20 years of 0.3%, which is only 6%, you would get 10 to years 30 at 1.5%, which is, you know, I mean, my gosh, that's 30%. So it really will help us in terms of retention and also our salaries with some of the competition. But our workforce is a little older than St. Louis County. So when you look at the actual average compensation, the median compensation for police officers, we're about $53,700, and St. Louis County is about $400 less. But what they did, and it's interesting, what they did is, I believe Stenger, the county executive, moved everybody up to like $47,000 something, $47,800 I believe last year, but now he's getting back flack because the officers are saying, hey, I'm making the same amount of money, you know, I've been here 5 years, as somebody who just is, you know, coming on board. So there's a lot of dissension with that type of tactic, and that's something we want to avoid in next year's negotiations.
Maybe they'll take a look at what you're doing, what we're doing too, and go from there. But kind of what I wanted to ask, when you refer to St. Louis County, is that all the municipalities that are there also? Because I know we lose also officers to different municipalities.
Yeah, that's a good question. No, yeah,
with the county.
Right, there are 93 municipalities. No, that is just with St. Louis County itself. We benchmark against them and also against St. Charles. And, we kind of laugh sometimes and say the people we hire are the adrenaline junkies. They're the policemen and the firemen that really want to come in, EMS, and want to work really, really hard. So one of the things that we also are doing in terms of our EMS, and I talked to Alderman Arnowitz a little bit about this, but I've also increased the recruitment rate, the starting pay for our EMS people. They work very, very hard, and we have a problem keeping them because they come in here, get a few years of experience, it's back-breaking work, we don't have enough ambulances, they're gone. So we have increased their salary from $38,000 to $40,000 per year, and that was part of the negotiation process with Demetrius. So we're real happy to be able to offer that to them as well and hopefully get some more stability there.
Thank you. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. Alderman Villa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume Rord is at his therapist this morning. Huh?
I think so. Yeah, I think he probably is. I'm gonna have to tell the board. It's pretty funny that the level of trust is there. He hasn't cussed me out yet. I think he's cussed out most other people, but he hasn't cussed me out yet. But it's funny because both he and John Buhassen and Neil Brunschweiger all called me and asking me for legal advice, and of course. Kathleen is a seasoned attorney, and I can't offer a legal opinion. I can say, well, as a bystander, this is what I can tell you. But, we've got an agreement with them, but they're suing us all over the place. So what can you say?
You threw a lot of numbers around, but can you put a number on any actual cost savings since we have now, in effect, control of the city police department?
Yeah.
It sounds like we
Sure.
saved some and gave some back. Is that?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the savings that I've seen have honestly come from the negotiation of contracts with the department personnel. We saved over $100,000 per year because I fired the prior consultant with the police for their benefits. I didn't think they were doing a good job. So I fired them and we consolidated. We saved $100,000 there. We saved about $60,000 a year on their EAP program because we consolidated with the city. We saved $536,000 per year just with the police post-65 retiree benefits, and those are hard, cold numbers. That is an actual decrease in costs. We saved money there. We saved money through the projected cost of the health insurance. If we would not have combined the police with our plan would have cost $55 million per year, and instead it's just slightly over $50 million per year. And we've got a rate cap, and our second-year rate cap is only 9%, which is below medical trends. So those are just some examples right off the top. Plus, we've also decreased the cost of like our long-term disability program and our dental programs.
Were you able to do that without going through the legislature?
Yes, absolutely, because I'm the chief negotiator for the city, and also it's my responsibility under the compensation ordinance to, negotiate the different welfare programs. So anything like the health insurance, medical insurance, dental insurance, et cetera, those are my responsibility.
But you just cannot arbitrarily change the provisions of the police retirement system.
No, that I cannot. With the PRS, we have in the collective bargaining agreement, we have a letter of commitment from the SLPOA that they will work with us to address, first of all, the drop program. Their drop program is very lucrative. It costs a lot of money. The SLPOA has agreed to go to a system that is cost neutral. And basically what that means is that if you complete your drop program, then you would start a new period of service, or you would not be able to add on to your existing service to increase the pension costs. It's a very costly benefit, even for civilian employees who are members of ERS. All the members of the Board of Aldermen are, but that costs us well over $1.5 million per year. The drop program is very expensive. But the SLPOA understands that we spend about $28,000 per year for the cost of a police pension. We spend about $27,000 per year on the cost of a firefighter's pension. We spend about $8,000 per year, slightly less than that now, for the cost of a city employee's retirement.
Now, is this the first time that in effect, that the police matrix is embodied in a city ordinance?
We had it first in 2013. We implemented in December 2013, and the board approved it with a $1,000 increase. But this is the first time that we've been able to fully capture all the various nuances and all the collective bargaining language in the ordinance itself, because there was a lot of different ways that we handle things, depending on whether or not a police officer were hired before 9/113 or not. The state statute protects their benefit levels. So we always have to use 9/113, the date of local control, as a benchmark for what we do, and we have observed that so that we don't have any exposure.
Is it fair to ask you how much free rein, poetic license, or whatever you have from the budget division or room 200 or from whomever when you sit down and negotiate with the,
Yeah, I mean, I will say that, I've always been, since I've been here, I always think that you need to have a dialogue with, with the key stakeholders, in terms of like, the budget director. They don't govern what we do, but we look at the costs. We discuss whether or not it's affordable. The budget director did all of our cost figures, for us. And we have a map of what the various proposals would cost and whether or not we felt that was sustainable. And then the executive director of operations attended most, 3/4 of the bargaining session. So he was also there, representing administration. So, it was very much of a very cooperative, collaborative type of process. A lot of strategizing about what we could afford and what we couldn't afford.
that's Mr. Walterman?
Yes.
Just briefly touch on police, fire, and what stipulations we have over, for instance, their overtime and or shift differential.
Okay, well, in terms of shift differential, that is something that is negotiated. The only thing that the state statute 84344 that governs the police transition to local control says is that cities may pay a shift differential to third shift officers. In fact, we do pay a 10% shift differential, but it's currently the police only get, commissioned officers only get shift differential for the third shift. Now, all the civilian police, all of them, receive the same shift differential as the rest of the city employees. And they gave up things for that. They gave up several of their personal days. They gave up the right to transfer their benefits if they go to another department, et cetera. And all other city employees receive a 10% shift differential if they work a second shift, with a minimum 4 hours, which would be like from 4 to 12. And they also get shift differential if they work any weekend hours. We believe, I'll be honest, I'm not saying anything the unions don't know, I think 10% is too high. We tried to get that down. We weren't successful, but I probably will be revisiting that. In the private sector, it's much more typical to look at perhaps a 3% shift differential or maybe a flat rate. So that will be something that I'll be pursuing in subsequent negotiations.
Okay. Is that logical, just to pay it for the third shift?
Is it logical? The logic behind shift differential is that the Department of Labor released statistics years and years ago that people who worked overnight shifts had a life expectancy that was 7 years less than the rest of us. So it was a real, concrete way of addressing the physical harm and toll that working an overnight shift costs. So, eventually I think, my feeling is that I would like to see the commissioned officers receiving the same kind of shift differential that the rest of the city is receiving. However, at the same time, I think what the rest of the city is receiving is too high. I mean, I'm just going to be blunt, and it's nothing I didn't say at the negotiation table. 10% is just too high. And that's something that we'll have to see if we can get back from the unions in exchange for something else.
And we'll eventually have numbers that will prove how much that's costing us, I guess.
Well, we know, what shift differential costs. We do have an idea. And I mean, not an idea, that's something that's contained in the budget director, prepared costs for shift differential for all of us, so all the different groups. So we do know what that costs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no further questions, and I appreciate your patience.
Okay, thank you, Alderman. Alderman Arnowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Frank.
Good
How you
morning.
doing? So I like what I'm hearing, especially getting the overtime worked out for city employees and all that. You know, I have a lot of concerns with the police department. And I think it falls on deaf ears, and certainly I think it's something that needs to be visited in the future. It's great that we're able to give this money to the police because I know the difference and hear it on the streets. And, you know, alarmingly, we're losing a lot of policemen.
Yes.
In fact, First District is going to lose 9 at the end of this month. And, you know, we're short officers in districts. We only had 8 cars covering the whole First District last night, and I only know that because I was riding along. You know, the thing that scares me is I think we have too many command people in the police department compared to how many actual police officers on the street. So the numbers keep getting lower and lower with officers, and admittedly, we're having a hard time recruiting new police
Yes.
officers. And I think one of the biggest problems is with the being under city control, the new officers, when it came under city control, have to live in the city of St. Louis. After 7 years, they don't have the option to move out. I'm correct in assuming that? That's what I hear.
That
So
sounds correct.
I think that brings a big problem because, first of all, that's part of probably getting recruitment classes. I think this last class going is only like 17 or 18. We're losing more than that each month. It goes back to the school system. You know, we have a horrible school system in the city. So a lot of people move out because of that. So I think when you tell officers that they can't move after 7 years, I think it's hard to find good officers.
I think residency, you know, it certainly is a very difficult issue.
Yes.
I'm not going to say it's not.
Right.
We go to job fairs. We went to Ferguson 1000. We went to Congressman Clay's outreach. We have outreach with Harris Stowe. We went to even get assistance to do police officer recruiting. We went to 30 different municipalities and counties. They were all short-staffed. No one could help us. We are doing testing on a continuous basis. The police chief was down 84 positions. We gave him 55 at first, and then he put on a class of 39 because the other people failed the background checks. Then we put on another class of 22. We've just given him 50-some more names. But, you know, when we do this, the police intelligence agency, their intelligence division eliminates a lot of different people because if they've had prior arrests or problems with their psychological evaluations, et cetera, those people keep falling by the wayside. So we are making, I think we're going to have 3 recruit classes this year, so we're in a much better position than we were. When we took over testing with the department personnel, they didn't even have a contract in place. The police department did not have a legal contract to even hire a test consultant. So, you know, I think that we're making grounds, and I think that increasing the salary from $32,000 to $41,000 per year is going to help. That is a substantial increase. We also did some other things. We allowed them to have the commissioned officer benefits immediately upon hire. And then secondly, we allowed the police officer trainees, they used to be called recruits in training. We've now made them police commissioned officers where they can now participate immediately in the police retirement system. So we're doing the things that we can to make it attractive, but the one thing I certainly can't deal with is the residency. Now, we've done it with corrections. We have gotten a contingent residency waiver for corrections. And Richard Gray, I don't know if he's here, but the Director of Public Safety was very appreciative because we've always had 60, 70, 80, 90 vacancies in corrections, and we're sending over 40, 50 at a time. I think we just certified almost 80 people to corrections because there's the hope that they could have the residency waiver, just the hope that they could have it. But the problem with the residency waiver is that if you grant somebody a residency waiver, if the Civil Service Commission does that, and then there are qualified city employees who want that job, we have to lay them off. And it's happened, as I understand, in the past before I got here. In terms of the command ratio, that's all due deference. That would be a discussion that you would need to have with the police commissioner. I know he keeps asking us to do promotional testing. we're scheduled to do that, and, we respond to his requests, but I think that is something that, the board would need to have directly with him in terms of his command structure.
And I know I've had that conversation before, so. But anyway, I'm glad to see things are moving forward, and just real quickly about the EMS personnel, that's good to hear. I think I cry this out all the time. I know we've been running about 2 to 3 ambulance short for the last few years.
Correct.
And, then Abbott gets called in. So if they're tied up, Abbott comes in our gateway, and we have a contract with them, and I don't know what they charge now, but when they come in for a call, the city, it's $1,000. So I know we don't charge $1,000, but my point is, I like to get 2 more ambulances back in existence again, and maybe we need to raise our fees just a little bit, and I think eventually we'll pay for it. God forbid if we have a major fire and we don't have no ambulance available.
I understand your argument. I know that it's been an issue for the unions. I can only speak from that perspective, but it has been an issue with the unions since the 12 years I've been here. EMS, has been typically understaffed, and there's been a lot of issues swirling around about that. We're addressing the salary component, and we're happy about that. But one of the things that, again, I might respectfully suggest is that you talk to the Director of Public Safety and the Fire Commissioner about what their budget looks like, and again, if there is room for additional vehicles so that we can take some of the strain off our EMS. That was one of the things that we had in corrections before. Didn't have enough staff, so people got themselves worked to death, and they left. And I think that that's a big issue. We have a lot of turnover in EMS because the jobs are so hard, and they work a lot of overtime.
Well, thank you, Director. I appreciate everything. It sounds like things are, looking way better this year. I think a lot of city employees will be happy. Of course, everyone's not going to be happy, so. But I appreciate the job you and your staff do, because I know I was a hard worker over there years ago.
He was wonderful.
Thank you.
And I did get the call first from Alderman Arnowitz about making sure that we dealt with that pesky holiday problem, so.
Okay. Thank you, Alderman. All right, Alderwoman Spencer, any questions?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Director Frank, thank you. I know we've been speaking over the last few months. I appreciate all your responses and helping me understand various things. I was kind of going through these lists of, different types of employees, and I'm not trying to nitpick. I'm actually just kind of curious.
Sure.
It seems like there are a lot of positions on here that we may not actually have.
I agree, yeah.
Have we, is there a reason we kind of keep them on there? It's my understanding that we no longer have air pollution inspectors, air pollution engineers, for example, a blacksmith and things of that nature.
Yeah, what we're going to be doing is a comprehensive review. I talked to my staff about that, and the Deputy Director, Tanner, that we believe, what we're looking at is to see whether or not the departments have used the positions within the next couple of years. And it would be easy for us to just go, look at the requisitions and say, you haven't had one, you haven't had one, you haven't had one, and then we have from time to time been asked to resurrect it. So what we're doing is we're going to make personal outreach instead to each of the departments to say, do you anticipate using any of these listed job classes? And then what I will do is prepare a list of proposed job classes for abolishment along with the overtime revisions, and that would be going to the, ultimately it would go to the Civil Service Commission and then to this board for final approval. But I think that's very prescient of you, because that's exactly what we're doing, is that we've probably got 100 dead job classes there that we want to get off the rolls, but we did want to reach out personally to the departments just to make sure that they didn't anticipate any restructuring or resurrection of that job title.
Sure. Can you describe now paternity leave and maternity leave that we offer city employees?
Yeah, it's just under family medical leave right now, and so anybody is, entitled to the 12 weeks of leave. In addition to the 12 weeks of leave, and you can use any of your accrued sick leave, medical leave, and then any compensatory time or vacation during that period of time. If you would need time beyond the 12 weeks protected family medical leave, then you can ask for general leave of absence from your doctor. If it is again, beyond the 90 days, and you're unable to return to work for your own personal health condition, you could file with our disability program, our private disability program, which is a nice feature. And the way it was designed was that after you went through the 12 weeks of family medical leave, you could immediately then qualify, or at least qualify to apply for the long-term disability leave, which gives you half your salary. One of the other things that we're exploring, and of course there's a cost to this, but is the use of paid family medical leave, and maternity leave would fall under that, or paternity leave.
Sure.
And I think some of the presidential candidates are even, talking about that. And I think there's been some talk at the state level, as a matter of fact, about, really coming up with a leave program. My staff has done some preliminary research on policies. I think our classification and compensation section has looked at some of the policies of organizations that have that. And so, we would be prepared to move fairly rapidly. We try and stand on the forefront. We brought domestic benefits, same-sex benefits to domestic partners back in 2005. This year, with our medical plan, we have transgendered benefits built into the plan, which is way ahead of the curve.
Sure, that's
And
wonderful.
so, we try and stay ahead of what most private sector companies do, not just public sector.
Okay, so it's my understanding that we don't offer paid maternity or paternity leave at this time.
You'd have to use your accrued time, correct. But it has
And
been a
that is-
discussion point,
okay.
though.
And that it is laid out, not in this document, not in this ordinance, but this ordinance authorizes an administrative regulation.
Correct.
That's separate from this.
That is correct.
And was that updated this year?
We are in the process of finalizing the family medical leave. There's a new direction. That's very much been an administrative regulation that has been in flux. Partially also family medical leave, because the EEOC has now said that even if you exhaust your 12 weeks of family medical leave, you may, under the Americans with Disabilities Act, be entitled to additional protected time off. And I scrutinized that. So we had one situation where we had a woman who had breast cancer, and the appointing authority was wanting to fire her because she couldn't return after the family medical leave. And I'm like, no, not going to work. She's got a physician's note stating that she can return at a date certain in November. You're not going to do it. She's protected by ADA. So we look at each of those individual employee cases, and believe it or not, I can tell you that I review every single piece of discipline for 7,500 employees myself personally.
Okay. Well, it's wonderful to hear. I'm glad to hear, grateful to hear that you're on the, looking at expanding that and what other cities are doing.
Oh, thank you.
That's the extent of the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Ogilvy?
Did I hear you say that Neil Bruntrager sought counsel other than his own?
Yeah, he did, actually. Interpretation of one of my regs. If I wouldn't know what I wrote, there would be a pretty sad state of affairs.
Do you have the bill in front of you there?
I can get it. I have it now, sir.
I wanted to ask a couple of questions about just details that I don't fully understand. Page 49.
Okay.
The paragraph about hiring incentives.
Okay, maybe I need to go back to my double-sided one. I'm sorry, I'm not used to. Let me do this one here. Okay, I've got it, thank you.
It's the part about hiring incentives up to 25% of the annual salary. Do we ever do that, is my question?
No,
No.
no. I have not done it in 12 years here.
In 12, okay. So this is sort of a legacy component that's been...
Yeah, it is. It's typically the path that I've preferred to use is to treat people equally. And so if we're having positions that are difficult to fill, we'll establish what we call a recruitment rate. There's 30 steps, then we'll say, we're going to hire based on step 5 because these are difficult to fill. And I prefer that. Now, that's not to say that if we had one single incumbent position that we couldn't use this, but it's not something that I've chosen to do. It's sort of like a payment of sick leave, payment for unused vacation leave. I haven't authorized that for 10 years. I believe you should use your vacation. If you can't use it, lose it.
Okay. This is akin to like a hiring bonus that we just haven't used.
Correct.
Okay.
We do relocation expenses from time to time if the department has it, but that's really the closest thing we get to actually having an incentive.
Okay. And then page 91. This is in
Okay?
vacation accrual. The last sentence, 1 week will consist of 40 work hours plus additional recreation time totaling 7 days. What does that phrase, additional recreation time, mean?
That's for the positions such as the commissioned police officers that may not have a set day that they take off. We work Monday through Friday, most of us are city employees, or even, Tuesday through Saturday. But, with them, there's a state statute that talks about, how many days they are to have off as recreation days. So there's a specific state statute. And this basically speaks to the fact that, for, people who work 40 hours, that they will be able to have this recreation time, which is basically a day off. And we interpret that as a day off without pay.
Okay. And then, it's not addressed directly in the bill, but metro system passes and the ability to purchase those pre-tax, is that, I gather that's something Metro offers, but the city at this point is not taking advantage of?
I haven't been approached with that yet. I don't know. I know that, in my department, we're very involved in, for instance, the recycling program, and Charles Pratt, the city safety officer, who reports to us, also coordinates the ride finder program. But with the Metro passes, I have not been approached by that.
Can I approach you now?
Absolutely. I've got a pen. I can.
I just gather that's something, it's no cost to us, but if an employee is using the Metro system to get to work, Metro offers them the ability to purchase like a monthly pass through their employer pre-tax, which saves them a little bit of money if that's something they're purchasing.
I think the question will be, and I may be wrong, but one of the things we'll have to look at is whether or not it requires a payroll deduction, because oftentimes in order to be.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. We would like to be able to do that, but under our current IT system, which I have nothing to do with, but under our current IT system, we don't have room for any more payroll deductions. It just can't be done. Hopefully, with the advent of New World or whatever system the comptroller ultimately enables, we will be able to add more payroll deductions. But that's the problem, is that if you have to process it on a pre-tax basis, it goes through payroll, and therein lies the problem. We just don't have any more room on the check.
Okay. And then I want to go back, I know you've already talked about this, but I want to go back to the police salary, particularly the trainees. So you said two things. One, just in the course of this year, we're bumping that introductory trainee salary from 32 to 41,000.
Correct.
But you also said we're making trainees commissioned officers immediately.
And I didn't mean to say that in terms of their rank or status, because you have police officer trainee for 6 months, then they serve a probationary period, and then after that, they become fully commissioned officers. But what I meant to say is, for purposes of retirement, they're treated the same.
Okay.
That's an important distinction.
When they get through this trainee period at 41,000, what's their salary?
Well, then they would
after
be
that?
eligible for the next step on their matrix. And the matrix for the police and the fire are front-end loaded. They get like a 7%, 6%, 5.5%. They're generous raises up until about year 10. But thereafter, you have a lot of long-term employees who aren't content because they're getting really de minimis level raises of only 0.3%. So that's a problem and something we would have to work through.
But every year, there's probably maybe 50, 60, 70 police officers who are in this training category. It's
Yeah.
everybody we hired that year for the first 6 months.
Absolutely, and we had
Okay.
the budget director cost out, again, there's figures for all this, but it cost the city $289,000 is all to be able to move all these police officer trainees up. which is not much when you look at the cost of even training an officer, So it was a very minimal amount of money for being able to give these people, a much better wage and hopefully attract a lot larger candidate pool.
Right, so our hope is we authorize this, and then next year we have a bigger pool of applicants to
Hope so,
hire
yeah.
from, because,
Yeah.
okay.
We've all been hit, for all of our positions post-Ferguson, all of our positions have been hit. We have probably 30 different vacancies where we have a difficult time. And the sad news is, and I can't, this is the board's decision and the people's decision, but many of the people that we want to hire in the economically challenged area, like Ferguson or Jennings or across the river, are the same people that can't afford to live here. They can't afford to sell their house that may be underwater, or they can't afford to relocate. And so that's a big challenge for us.
And then the across-the-board increases for every police department employee has been about 5,000 over the last 4 years, is that?
Yeah, 2013, they got $1,000, 2014, 1,000, 2015, 1,000, and this year, 2,000. So it'll have been $5,000. We also rewarded both the fire department and the police department commissioned officers for physical fitness, for taking either physical examinations or for taking physical examination tests in order to help make them more fit for duty.
And the discrepancy in pay between officers in St. Louis and in St. Louis County, that was mostly an early career discrepancy.
Yes, that's well said. I think as you got into about 7 or 8 years, you would see that it was much, much closer. But unfortunately, not unfortunately, but St. Louis County then made the decision, last year to bring all of its officers up to this level near 48,000. So they're now dealing with this compression and unhappy people. And, we've raised the salary of our correctional officers, and we pay more than St. Charles or St. Louis County. And we got complaints. They were unhappy out in St. Charles County because, St. Louis County, because they're complaining that the city pays more for its correctional officers. Sorry, guys, what can we do?
Okay. Does the fire department have that same trainee category, or is
No,
that
it does not.
Okay.
No, they come right in as probationary firefighters and are immediately then in the matrix.
Okay. So, but suffice to say, we've heard a lot about recruitment issues within the police department over the last 2 years, and also that their pay was not competitive, and we've taken kind of a big step forward within this bill and some of the other pay increases the last
I
couple
think so,
years, too.
yes.
Okay.
And it is a significant investment. I mean, we're looking at, just to show you the figures, because I want to be responsible, but, we looked at, it's for all city employees, there's about 4,500 regular civil service employees. We're spending about $1.9 million, $1.9 million. For the pay for fire and for the police, we're spending $4.8 million. So, I mean, you do the
In
math.
increases in this,
Yes. And those were figures, directly from the budget division. The budget director was very helpful with that. But we realized that we've got a real problem with our public safety, and, so we need to make those adjustments to be competitive.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alderman. I think Alderman Villa had a question or two.
Yeah, Director, in section 1, the list of classes, I'm looking for instance, is the new bike czar or the lady that's in charge of honeybees now. These are positions that are going to save us from the evils of society. Do you just categorize them under a bigger umbrella, or?
They're all listed. We might have, I know there's a commissioner on the Civilian Oversight Board. That position is in there. We have anybody in the classified service is in this pay ordinance. And that includes the civil service employees as well as any of the accepted employees that are politically appointed.
So the bike czar might be under surveyor.
The pedestrian coordinator, does anybody know the name of that? I think he's a traffic engineer. Traffic engineer? Okay.
The bike czar is a traffic engineer?
If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck.
I think we're paying him less to just be on staff than we were paying him in previous years as a consultant. So we're probably saving money.
Wasted money.
Okay.
I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Alderman. Okay, I guess that concludes all the questions that we have from our committee. I'd just like to make a motion to pass out Board Bill 65.
Second.
All right. So, Mr. Clerk, can you call the roll, please?
Alderman Ortman,
Aye.
Alderman Villa,
Aye.
Alderman Arnowitz,
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy, Alderwoman Spencer, Alderwoman Green, Alderman Ogilvy,
Aye.
Chairman Williamson.
Aye.
We have 7 ayes and 0 noes.
All right, Board Bill 65 has been passed. I will do pass recommendation. So, that concludes.
Thank you very much,
Appreciate
Alderman
it.
Williamson, for your continued guidance, and for Alderman
you.
Arnowitz squawking at me at the right time to get things going. Thank you.
Okay, public employees is now adjourned. Thank you.